Kevin Roth here of RotoGrinders, and today we're going to talk about the RG Discord. If you're not a member, you should be. It is a fantastic community and resource that RotoGrinders provides, and it's easy to join as well. All you have to do is click the Discord icon on RotoGrinders or go to rotogrinders.com/discord. From there, you'll either sign up if you're new to RG, or if you're already a member, just click the link at the top to go to the sign-in page. Once you've logged into your RG account, you can be taken to Discord to log in there. Once you've connected those accounts, you won't have to leave the server. You can freely close out and reopen Discord without ever having to reconnect. The idea of Discord might be a little bit daunting to you, but it's actually pretty simple to navigate. Whether you're on mobile or desktop, the far left side will show you the Discord servers that you've already joined. Then next to that, you'll see the channels within that Discord. We have both free channels like Chiefs Prop Shop and our daily sport channels, and we also have premium channels like Blender's Game Theory or the Crunch Time channels. Premium members can see the difference between the free and premium channels by looking for a padlock icon next to the premium channel names. We also have a few pointers for new and experienced users alike. If you're having trouble finding a channel, make sure that you haven't collapsed the section that the channel is in. Collapsing a channel will only allow it to appear when there are unread messages in that channel. Also, we find that using the actual Discord program works better than opening it in a browser like Safari or Chrome. Lastly, if you're having trouble with one of our tools, your RotoGrinders account, or any other technical needs, you can hop in our feedback and help section of channels to get help from one of our wonderful support and moderation team members. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out on Twitter @RotoGrinders or email support@rotogrinders.com. See you in Discord.
Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blenderhead, Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, April 18th. I think your taxes are due today. Go pay your taxes today. It's tax day, I believe. I think it's only 18th. I don't know. I've done it. I did it already. But we know what we do on Mondays. We bring in James McCool. James McCool, Mondays with McCool, co-author with me on the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour DFS audio masterclass you can find at theoryofdfs.com. Get your thumbs in before we who knows what we'll talk about today. Remember, Mondays are about whatever happens. Who knows what we'll talk about. DFS strategy. Get your questions in the YouTube chat. We got the baseball slate tonight. I think there's going to be like 3 games postponed. So who knows what happens tonight in baseball. We got the real life pitcher in here, Doug Montgomery, Brian Tedeschi. He says he finished 9th in the mini max. Congratulations, Jim Steele, Trey, Brian C. Okie doke. James, did you play USFL over the weekend?
Absolutely not. I don't want to play NFL in April, dude. Like I don't want to do almost anything in terms of having to do extra research or like set up extra baselines or anything like that. I don't want to do that. Like basketball is still going. I haven't even had a break from basketball yet. Why would I want to take on another news-heavy sport?
But you saw what was going on with USFL. Apparently, if you played USFL contests over this past weekend, I mean, you're playing for nothing. I mean, it's essentially you can't lose. You can only win. You can't lose because they locked the contests early or something, and then the ownership showed, and then a game was postponed, and then they couldn't late swap at 4 for a 5 p.m. All I saw on Twitter was that, and then you also had like no one knew who was playing. Like all I saw was like, oh, this 34% owned guy is like on the practice squad. Like it's not even like in the game. I assume that if you used our RotoGrinder stuff, you would have known that. I assume. I'm just saying. I'm not playing USFL, but apparently there's a big edge. But to find that edge, good luck to that. Good luck. Apparently, even the good players were like, well, this guy isn't even. This guy was supposed to be the number 1 wide receiver, and he's not even on the field, right? And this guy was supposed to be the starting running back, and he ain't there. And from what I could tell on my timeline, the games are awful. The games are absolute false start penalties, and you can't kick field goals, and
there were
no one going for it on 4th down.
No, there were guys who were not supposed to be with the team who ended up starting, and like,
was that in the new? Was that like, was it the type of thing where like it was reported one way and then like it wasn't that way? Like what like, oh, these players are active for the game, and it's like, no, the day of, like, no, they're not.
Right? Yeah. There's no actual like, there's no reliable reporting going on, I guess.
It's all in one place. How do you not they're playing all the games in Birmingham?
Dude, I don't know. This is the problem with these summer leagues is like, it's the same cycle that happens every single time. We've seen it multiple times now for months. Somebody like, it starts off with some like rich person saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And then they buy the rights to it, and then it gets trademarked, and then it starts entering our bubble, right? And then people are like frothing at the mouth. And then it starts getting pushed a little bit more. Like there's marketing, there's ad campaigns, there's like Twitter feeds, and but like social media teams are built up, and like, oh, all this hype. And there's just money pumped into the hype. There's money pumped into the advertising, right? And then it gets into the actual season, and this is what happens. The games are god awful, just terrible quality games. The media coverage is terrible. Like you can't find it to watch it almost anywhere. There's no more social media presence. They've basically fired all social media teams. There's no more marketing. There's no more advertising, and there's no reliable reporting, and they just drop it off the face of the earth. And they're like, well, let's just let it run and see how it does. It's like nobody actually wants to dedicate to this thing. And I said it before, it's like, there's now been multiple instances where it's like, why would this league be the thing that would catch on and be exciting for Americans when frankly the NFL, the pinnacle, the premier version of football in America, is not even that great of a product like 90% of the time. So if the good games in the USFL are like bad NFL games, it's what are we doing? Like, why are we even doing this? Why do people keep trying this?
Well, I mean, for us, it's more about who cares about the sport. It's more about winning it at the daily fantasy version.
There's no news.
But isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing? You embrace the variance. Randomly pick people then.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. If you want to throw together all the permutations of lineups or whatever, and just randomly pick 150 of them and just go for it, do whatever you want to do. But I don't think that creates edge. I just think that means that everybody is guessing at the same level of everybody else. And if you can develop good ownership projections, maybe you can leverage that. But at the same time, like, you don't know if 34% owned on a wide receiver is good or bad because you don't even know if they're gonna play. So
just fade all those people.
That's not an edge.
Just play all the 5%, play the 1%. It just seemed like I'm looking at my Twitter feed. I didn't play, obviously. I'm looking and people are like, oh, 45% owned running back in Showdown is a 0 because he's not on the field. And I'm like, so all I have to do is like it's the general concept that I apply in DFS to the extreme, right? Of people think they know. Like the main reason I make money in DFS and GPPs is people are too confident in what they know. I'm not saying that that you should know better. Just all you're doing is taking advantage of overconfidence. So people are like, well, I'm going to play X, Y, and this is the best team, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Here's the best stack and best projected stack in MLB, and this guy's going to pitch at least 100 pitches, and then like you don't know. Like there's a probability that doesn't happen, right? And people are too sure. They think in 100% or 0%. Now in USFL, it's a difference of like, well, everyone thinks this, I'm going to think that. You don't even know what the other thing to think is because you've almost no information whatsoever. But I would think in the showdown contest, especially, that you go in and when it's like, oh yeah, this is before the first game of the season, right? So like, you don't even have any sample size whatsoever, and you're just guessing on the depth chart, I guess. Like, why not just go in and just say, like, even if you do it by ownership sum and go, I'm just going to play really much lower ownership sum lineups to get chalky lineups out of my lineup, because what does anyone know? I mean, we see this in every, you see this in every, we could see this in every sport. I mean, like in MMA over the weekend, we had this fight at Closa, right? Jakar Close was the biggest favorite on the slate. He's facing Brandon Jenkins, who's not even a UFC level fighter. And the whole week, people are talking about his neck. Apparently from the Jerry Stevens fight, he got shoved on the podium during their press conference and it screwed up his neck. And he's been talking about it that the UFC won't say anything about it, but his neck is completely screwed up and he needs surgery on it. But in the UFC, they don't pay the fighters well enough. So like he's going to fight anyway because he needs the money. So you know what that did? That decreased the ownership on this guy because it's like, oh, this guy screwed up, right? But the betting line didn't even change. Like the betting line was still a minus 525 favorite. He's 50% chance to win inside the distance. And inside the MMA DFS bubble, it's like, I don't know, can you pay the most expensive price for a guy that maybe his neck is totally screwed up? Like, yeah, but he's also like 17 levels above the guy that he's fighting, like quality wise. So I'm just sitting there going, I'm just going to jam him, right? I played way over the field, played him in a ton of lineups, and he put up the highest score on the entire slate. Because why? The other guy is awful, and he pummeled him, right? What much did he wouldn't be allowed by the athletic commission in Nevada to compete if he was that injured. Right. So people are creating these things that it may be true. His neck could have been screwed up. But what do you know? You don't know nothing. You don't know nothing. So all I hear is that. And then I know that the ownership's going to go down. Then on the other side, you may hear, oh, there's no chance that this guy. And then next thing you know, that guy wins. Right. Like there's no chance that guy wins, even though he has like a 12% chance on the money line. It's like, oh, well, what? If no one's going to have him, I'll have him. So like for USFL, to me, that's like the extreme version of that. Like it's the first game of the season. No one knows anything. So why don't you do the thing that people joke about online, James? The thing that I thought maybe for the first week of USFL, you could do. This is kind of antithetical. We do have USFL content to just look at what everyone's saying, right? Go to what any content about the league, DFS wise, and just do the complete opposite. Right, I know that's the joke. You can't do that normally, right? Normally, you're going to get screwed doing that. But I'm saying it's the first week of the season. What does anyone know? We're all looking at the same bare basic information that doesn't really. The depth chart on the website. Come on, we've gone to depth charts on NFL websites and they're completely wrong. We have social media teams tweeting out the wrong players. Right? It's like, oh, this guy. It's like, no, that's not that guy. That's the other on your own website. Number 8 is this other guy, not this guy. He's not even on the field. So like, if that's where you're getting the information from, like just set the ownership sum of my line and look at projected ownership, right? Which is hard to project on the first week of the season. And then you just set it down. It's like, oh, well, what's the optimal ownership sum, right? Oh, 162. It's like, I'll set it to 80, right? Just have that and just build lineups. Right. And there's whatever it is. And maybe your 3% owned guy actually ends up being the wide receiver 1. Right. But to me, it's unlikely that like everything that everyone knows, that's what's going to be correct for the first week of the season. And then the second week of the season, James, that's my favorite week because that's everyone overreacting to a 1-game sample size. And then you start doing the opposite direction. The problem with the USFL, though, is that you could do this like, week 1. No one knows anything, contrarian. Week 2, you do the opposite of what everyone thinks based on 1 week sample size. And week 3, you don't have any contest because the league folds. So like how much of your edge, right? You don't, you're right. How much are you going to devote into the whole season when you're not even, Like my question is like, which comes first, the league folding or DraftKings only having $5,000 prize pool contests for them? Like it's going to be one. It's going to be at some point where we get to week 7 and it's like, it's not even worth even entering the DFS contests. Or week 7 just doesn't happen.
Yeah, the price pools are absolutely going to be tragically bad by week 4. They're going to be so bad if it makes it to week 4, obviously. Like all of the problems that they had in terms of I don't understand how they messed so many things up though.
DraftKings, I mean, they messed up I wouldn't be shocked if DraftKings doesn't even offer contests for it anymore.
No, I wouldn't either.
Other than showdowns, I think I could see DraftKings doing all showdowns only, but because they messed up the classic slate, like just in like you've been doing DFS for 10 years or something.
Like how did they? I don't understand how they messed up the specific things that they did. Right, like we haven't had ownership before contests in what, 5 years? 4 years, 5 years,
right, for a non-late swap.
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't see how they could lock, because what they did is they locked at lock. It showed the ownership of everyone, even though you could still edit your lineups.
Yeah. So
like, how does that? What contest does that ever exist? Like it never exists. Like, so what kind of functionality ever could
we had it? Like that was a function a while ago. Remember, like you were able to see ownership of players before the slate's lock. I specifically remember being able to see the ownership of players. I don't remember what sport it was, but it was a feature
as a glitch, not as a feat. No, never.
No, it was a feature for a little while. Or am I just like super high right now? But
you're super high. That's never happened.
What site was it that would happen?
I can tell you that's not. You would see the ownership of the players that did lock already, but not the ones that didn't. The only time that you wouldn't see the ownership that you could possibly is NBA when there was no late swap. So even though the players' games did not start, you would still see the 10 o'clock players' ownership because no one could swap anything.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay,
that I can. I mean, I barely remember that, but that at least makes sense. But I've never seen where the ownership showed and you could still switch out players.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm thinking of. But like that feature of, I just don't understand how that glitch happens on DraftKings after from a technical standpoint, from a coding standpoint, from somebody who knows how to build like applications and stuff like that. I don't understand how that makes it past and into the live USFL product. Like you had to have been testing things, and this feature has not existed in contests. Like you have not been able to see forward ownership since that little NBA thing where there was no late swap. So how does that even make it in? And then on top of that, the main contest, they sent out like 20,000 free tickets to. What?
No, the problem, see, I don't consider that a problem. That's just a choice they made. But the fact that they sent out 20,000 free tickets more than a day before the contest locked, right, and it filled with those tickets. Like they basically said, they pressed the fill button. Like we're at 5,000 entries and it's a 25,000 entry contest. We're gonna go, you can just press the fill button now.
But like, we've seen them do that before, and FanDuel does it relatively frequently, where they'll like send you a voucher or whatever and be like, hey, get into this contest because we have a $3 NFL contest with 500,000 people in it and we don't think they're going to fill it. But they do it later, and they do it when they're like, apparently their algorithm had to have said this USFL contest is not filling fast enough, so we have to send out all these free tickets, but they didn't wait near long enough.
Or they sent out too many. To me, this is a business choice for them. Operationally, if tons of people are like, oh, I couldn't get in because they gave out so many, like, why wouldn't you register before that? I mean, if you were going to play, I mean,
There's a lot of people that register later.
I guess so,
it's
but
not like people like you and me, where as soon as like week 1 of NFL comes out, we're going to wreck our contests. Like
right.
there are plenty of people that wait, and I get that, and I understand waiting, and I understand like people being bummed that DraftKings sent out all these free tickets for no reason. They free.
Yeah, but you wouldn't feel bummed if you're one of the 5,000 that were in there because you're getting so many more dead lineups.
Yeah, of course. No. Of course, people who were like fully maxed into that, like at the beginning of it, they must have had great EV, but I don't even think that they won because they didn't know anything. They didn't know anything. It was such a snafu, man. And I just.
James, the thing that to me that was the most noticeable, I think this highlighted what I've said for years upon years upon years. People don't believe me. People question when it comes to late swap.
Mm-hmm.
I've said less than 1% of people late swap ever. People are like, that's way too low because they remember that. Oh, okay, I'll switch this off the an NBA. You'll go, oh, I'll switch. We're part of a very small bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 1%. We have a USFL slate that exists for 2 days, right? This is this classic slate that it's not like all the games lock at once, even though they showed the ownership of all the players. You had the option of swapping as much as you want, knowing all of the ownership. And there are wide receivers, which are typically the highest variance position in a league we know nothing about. And on depth charts, we are completely unsure of. And the highest owned, the wide receiver that was like 32% owned, that everyone saw was 32% owned. The next day, by the time they took away the ownership, right? They on display, and then that game locked, the guy was more owned. 32% wide receiver ended up being slightly more owned. And there were other guys, like you looked at the ownership differences. I saw this on Twitter, and like no one changed. Like everyone saw the ownership and no one changed.
You saw 28% owned on a defense.
Right.
28% owned on a defense. And you didn't get off of that defense.
Right. And the ownership ended up being about the same.
Yeah, it was like 24.3 to like 24.1 or maybe 22% or something like that. But are you serious? No, I absolutely agree. People do not, and we talk about this a lot in the Masterclass in Theory of DFS, where we talk about the idea that late swap as a function, if you're not utilizing it at basically every single junction that you possibly can, if you're not making an effort to increase the expected value of your lineups based on the ownerships that you see and the new known information. Remember, we're dealing with unknown and known information. If you get more known information and you are not actively reevaluating what you're doing, then you're not utilizing late swap to its fullest degree. And I understand, like, not everybody cares to use late swap to their largest degree because it takes away time investment, life utility, whatever. But like, if you're trying to maximize your expected value and you see there's a 32% owned player in the USFL and nobody knows anything about this league, and you don't instantly get off like almost all of that player to swap to somebody who directly leverages him, you don't even bother. You should be looking for every way not to use late swap. You should be lobbying to have everyone take late swap off their sites because you don't want to use it.
Right. Well, I mean, NBA is the perfect example of that. I mean, right. The late game, someone's out. So, I mean, like that is the biggest edge because we may be preaching to the choir. We may be talking to tons of people that utilize late swap. Now, is it less advantageous in baseball? Yeah. You know, it's not as much of an, I'm not talking about as far as like a pitcher gets scratched, a batter get, something like that. I'm just talking about like you have a lineup and, you're stacked it well in the 7 o'clock game, and you have the contrarian pitcher in a late game, and you switch to the chalkier pitcher. Like you could do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say in the Dodgers game today, we're looking at tonight, for instance. Let's say you have Kershaw and Bellinger in your lineup or something, and you're like, well, everyone's going to be playing Frankie Montas or Sean Manaea, but your cheaper Pittsburgh stack went off, It's like, well, I could switch my pitchers out to now Manaya plus Montes and take the chalky one. Like you could do stuff like that in baseball. It's not going to be the type of thing where, oh, this guy's out, you got to play the other guy. But it's more the fact of if you're way ahead,
You want to block people.
you want to block people. If you're way behind, you want to get on. Like if for instance, if you took a pitcher, using tonight's game as tonight's slate as an example, even though like the first 3 games on the slate are more likely going to be postponed. But let's say you took Eric Lauer against the Pirates or something like that, and the Pirates just crush him. And you're sitting there with Eric Lauer with -7 points. Like maybe your core stack, your Philly stack, that may be chalky tonight. Maybe it's time to just start removing that stack, right? It's like your 7% owned pitcher that you used got blown up. You're way behind. So playing 20% owned hitters on what's going to be functionally a 6-game MLB slate is probably not ideal. That's when you'd start to be swapping. Now, what you'd be doing is going, who are the chalk pitchers, right? If it's Manaya and Montes, now it's like, well, with Eric Lauer's -6, I don't think I could win a GPP, but how do I easiest get up to the cash line? Well, why don't I just play the batters against the 2 chalkiest pitchers, right? So why don't I play Cincinnati and Baltimore people in my lineups to make up the difference? Because I'm already way behind in the pitching slots, and you could do that vice versa. If you have a contrary, if you're playing contrary in Pittsburgh, and they put up 1 run and they barely have any points, and by like 9 o'clock, like you have Manaya and Montes, it's like just switch to Lodolo and Anoa, right? And switch to 2 pitchers that are going to be like sub 5% owned. Give you a better chance of min-cash. Hey, you could even do actually fairly well with those lineups, especially in baseball, where if you switch to that much leverage, it's not a matter of taking your lineup just to the cash line, but maybe you get a 4X, 5X, maybe come in top 5%. Even with that, everything looks good in your lineup except for like one, -6 pitcher slot or like a 3-man zeros in your lineup. It's perfectly viable. Not enough people do that type of stuff.
I mean,
and especially if you're playing like 1 to 5 lineups, I don't see how you can't do that because it's totally tenable to do. 150, I can understand. It's a little bit more complicated to start late swapping out. We got the tool in lineup HQ to do it, but I can understand that being a little bit more complicated. But 1, 3, 5 lineups, I don't see any reason why. If or in an early game you're like, close the laptop. It's like, don't close the laptop. Start switching out some of your get even lower ownership and even 5%. If you could get your cash rate from those dead lineups 5% of the time, by the end of the year, that makes up for a decent amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, I won a GPP with Chris Archer with like -8 or something like that, because like he started out really bad and he was, I don't know, maybe like 15% owned or something. And I was like, okay, well, he sucked really bad. So I have to get off of, I think it was probably a popular Yankee stack or something like that. I had like Archer with the Yankees and I switched over to an Angel stack instead. The Angels put up like 14 runs or something. And Mike Trout had 40 fantasy points, and Brandon Marsh or who, I don't know, they're the leadoff guy. The Angels, whatever bad person is leading off of the Angels, ended up doing really, really well. But it was because I switched off that Yankee stack onto like a 5% owned Angel stack all the way across the board, and that let me like skyrocket up the leaderboards. The other thing that you can do is also not just looking at it and saying, okay, well, Eric Lauer gave me -6, so now I need to figure out how to like give myself more volatility to pass people to try to cash. But if you're already cashing and you see, you get to the point where there's only like maybe 2 games left and you look ahead of you, maybe you're in like 15th or something like that of a GPP. And you look ahead of you and you've got the same positions that are not locked as like 4 of the people in front of you. Like you don't want to get blocked. So you want to make sure that you can kind of add up a little bit of math, and it's a little bit more complicated when you get up there, but add up the math, see what players you think are most likely to be on the rosters ahead of you, and make sure that you're not duped. Like you still need to be doing things like that, try to maximize your EV, because if you split 5 ways with other people, when you could be aiming for first, or if you split like 10 ways, if it's like a 2-game slate, like 15 people ahead of you, you're in 20th, and 15 people ahead of you all still have an outfield slot left, and you have an outfield slot left, and it's like very, very obviously going to be Giancarlo Stanton for a lot of them. Like you all have the same salary left, you all basically have the same lineup, and it's probably Giancarlo Stanton for that last spot. Leave money on the table and go to Aaron Hicks or something like that. Like you don't want to dupe with the 15 people ahead of you because your expected value is just shot if you do that. So you need to be evaluating things that way too, thinking about how you can pass people who are ahead of you, thinking about how you can block people who are behind you. If you're in first place of that entire thing, and there's people behind you who are very likely to have Giancarlo Stanton, then you can have Giancarlo Stanton and beat them by 1 fantasy point. You want to do that like every time. So thinking about things like that, just people don't utilize late swap near enough. And I remember back when DraftKings took late swap off of NBA when they did that fun little experiment. Which I prefer, by the way. Yeah. I was very against it at the time, right? At the time, and I was still learning a lot about DFS at the time. So I was going back and forth, and like now I look at that, I'm like, yeah, I'd much prefer not to have late swap because it removes so much of like the edge that I'm losing from actually wanting to spend time with people that I care about after lock. That's a massive thing that people don't really think about. And you're like, oh, well, but what if I have an injured player who I can't swap off of? Well, guess what? Nobody else can either. Like that your edge is still the same. Like it actually evens the playing field for people who are not as time dedicated as people who have all the time in the world to be making those swaps. So I was against it back then, but now I'm fully in the camp of remove late swap from everything and just let the chips fall where they lie, and I'll be okay, and I can just go spend some more time with my kid.
Right. Well, like the difference in NBA late swap is the biggest advantage you could have in all of DFS, essentially. Now, why would I say, well, I don't want that? I don't want that biggest edge ever. Well, for a couple of reasons. One, the more that good play, like from a long-term perspective, if you're thinking about making money from a long-term perspective, having that big of an edge in NBA late swap is just bleeding the bad players dry too quickly, right? I mean, if you're not going to utilize late swap in NBA, you're going to be losing a lot more money, right?
NBA. Yeah,
right. So I want to win the most amount of money, but I don't need to win it as quickly as possible. I mean, like I want over time. I want bad players, just like in poker. I don't want bad players to go broke too quickly, or they're not going to come back. Right. So from a long-term health perspective of the DFS ecosystem, it's better to remove edges that are that big over the field, especially when more casual players are not going to use it. Number two is that I still have an edge even without late swap, right? So like there's an edge there regardless. And then when you have to go from 7 to 10:30 or something on most nights, and essentially from an hourly efficiency perspective, like it's basically NBA season is like, well, my nights are done. Like I'm going to be, if I'm not willing to be at my computer for 3.5 hours or whatever, then I don't play. Right. So if it was just late swap, no, and you got rid of it, 7 o'clock, everything locks. And then if they're questionable players, you have to make the assessment of, do I play Fred VanVleet? Right. He's questionable. Or if I don't play Fred VanVleet, do I play, Armani Brooks or whoever the hell, Gary Trent, whoever would benefit from him being out. Right. Or do I play some lineups with him and some lineups for that, some that without it, right? If in case this happens, you have to do that yourself. And then once lock hits, I don't have to worry about it anymore. If I get a 0, I get a 0. Like that was what I aimed for. Jokic is out. Oh, okay. On to tomorrow, right? You have to think like that. So I don't mind that. And it makes it so that at 7 o'clock, I'm done, right? I don't have to like, this Fred VanVleet's out and this guy's out now. Gary Trent projects well. I can't do anything about it. I don't care about it if the projections change anymore. It doesn't matter. I can't do anything about it. It is what it is.
A funny thing about what you're talking about here is you're like, oh, and at 7 p.m., like I'm done. And both you and I, we think about the idea of being done for the day in terms of DFS, and it just sounds like the best thing in the world. And there are people that are like, oh, well, you guys get to watch sports and like play DFS all day, and like that's your career. And we're like, yeah, and that's really, really cool. But it doesn't mean that I'm not absolutely exhausted of doing those things sometimes. And especially at the end of the day, especially if you deal with every single sport. And especially if you're at the end of the NBA season, like come March, the reason why I didn't want to play USFL, it's not that I couldn't build a model for it. It's not that I couldn't like do the news aggregation. I could have built scrapes for things. I could have done all of these things, whatever. Bro, it is the middle of April. I am exhausted from NBA season, and I need like 3 weeks to remember how to live a normal life. Because NBA season is brutal, not only from a DFS player perspective, where like even like the DFS player perspective is probably even more taxing. And I didn't really specialize in NBA back when I played like to pay my bills. And like now as a content creator, I get to pretty much be done unless I'm worried about some late news, like Steph Curry is questionable, or you have a Donovan Mitchell or something like that is questionable. These West Coast games. Then I have to worry about it. I have to be by my computer and ready to make some corrections to updates and stuff like that. But like, I'm tired, man. And I understand that it's really cool, the job that we get to do, but that does not mean that we don't get exhausted from dealing with like the day-to-day mental capacity stuff and the day-to-day like constant attention to what we have to do and the craft that we have to do. It's a grind, man. It's a true grind.
Right. Most of the time I spend is during an NBA season. NBA season, it's like my brain has to turn on from like 5:30 at night to 10:30. I mean, like that it's mental focus the whole way through, because I'm not going to build lineups at 2:00 in the afternoon. That's the easy time. I'm not doing it. That's when I'm doing shows like this. That's why, whatever. Right. Baseball's much easier. Baseball, okay, the lineups come in. You have to sweat some postponements from rain stuff. But pretty much once you build your lineups, you've built your lineups. I mean, come lock, you're done, right? And then you can go off and do whatever the hell you want. Sometimes a lot of times I put on MLB TV and I have like 6 games on at once. But then come 8 o'clock, a lot of times I'm not watching baseball. I mean, like the first hour, because typically my wife has the opposite schedule from me. So my wife works the third shift. So my wife works midnight to 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
4 days a week. She's a crisis counselor. So if you're in Kentucky and you're thinking about suicide, you're probably going to be talking to her. So like typically her like morning is like 8 p.m. Right. So that's typically when she'll wake up, because she'll wake up, right? Spend 4 hours. We'll spend 4 hours together. Then she works. I go to sleep. Then by the time I wake up at, and 10 in the morning, she's going to sleep, right? Like kind of the opposite. So like our time together is typically from 8 to midnight. So if it's during basketball season, like when the hell, like that, I'm working. I gotta, or at least I'm on the couch with the RotoGrinders alerts and got pause whatever we're watching. I gotta go and switch lineups. And then I also know that a half an hour from now, the 8 o'clock games, and we're going to say, starting lineup. Oh, Alex Len is starting.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go and go. Like that's baseball. That doesn't rarely happen. Right. By 8 o'clock, even the West Coast, we have this 10-10 game. Maybe that lineup doesn't come in until 7:30. And maybe it's like, I got to switch out Will Smith with Austin Barnes, that type of thing for the Dodgers. Or,
right.
Chris Taylor isn't in and it's Gavin Lux, or, what, that type of thing. But for the most part, like most of my work is for DFS is done here in the morning. So 11 to 1, I guess, something Eastern time. And then for base, then it's like, if I'm doing Grinders Live, then it's like 4:45 till lock-ish time. Right? Typically the middle of the afternoon, I'm not doing anything. And then past lock, I'm not really doing anything either, but that's still an ample amount of time. I mean, it's just still spending 5 to 6 hours a day doing something DFS related. And in between all of that, someone like you you're dealing with scraping and models and updating stuff and this thing is, and for multiple sports. Me, I'm not doing that. But still, like on Wednesday, typically is when I'm setting up my MMA spreadsheet, right? Start looking at odds for that, right? And then soccer, right? Soccer, there may be a midweek slate, Saturday slate. I'm looking into stuff like there's stuff that I'm doing in between all those times. But the place that I don't want to spend the most amount of time, it's weird to say, most people enjoy the sit down and watch some sports type of time. But that's the least productive part of
Right.
DFS, because you're not. I do enjoy watching MMA. So on Saturday, I will sit down and watch the entire card, right? Which could take 6 to 7 hours, right? But I'm doing that for purely entertain. There's no reason to. I enjoy it, right? All the other stuff I really like. Watching 6 baseball games at once is not something I feel like I have to do. Like I'm going to watch 5 hours of baseball. Basketball, I don't even remember the last time I watched an NBA game. NFL, I'll put on red. So NFL's the other one. You put on red zone. So from 1 o'clock Eastern to 7:30 Eastern, I'm sitting and I'm watching red zone, right? But that and MMA, and then like Premier League mornings, Saturday morning, 10 to 12, right? Champions League, maybe 3 to 5 in the afternoon on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Other than that, I'm not watching any sports, because to me, I find that it's not, number one, it's not productive to do so. You're not gaining anything by it. You're just wasting time. And the sports, other than those times that I'm mentioning, are times where, because of my wife's schedule, like we'll spend time together watching something else or doing something, going out, or do something that's not DFS related, because we also have a life.
Right. Yeah, I mostly just watch. I mean, my day is only slightly different from yours, and the only reason why it's different is because I have, instead of shows most days, I'm just running models. I'm putting together stuff. Like the hardest days for me are days like I think it was it yesterday or was it 2 days ago, where FanDuel decided to break up the MLB slate into like 9 different variations. And that sucks. Like that's hard, because then every single hour I pretty much have to switch the models to different games and like do a whole bunch of different things. But for the most part, it's like I get up at 6:30 in the morning. I play video games until 8 a.m. That's my time. Nobody gets to tell me what else I'm doing with my time until 8 a.m. And then I make Damascus breakfast. And then I usually get to work around 9 and then do work running models until around noon or so, depending on when slates lock. It depends on the year, but then I'll have the middle of the day where we'll probably go get lunch or something like that. And then I'll come back and then I'll work through from about 3 p.m. until 6:30 p.m. And that 6:30 p.m., if I have to work after 6:30 p.m., I am disgruntled. I am a very unhappy employee after 6:30 p.m. because it's like, I just want to be able to sit down on the couch and watch something with my fiance and hang out and exist as a person in my relationship, and not be running some sort of models or looking at numbers or anything like that. Like I don't want to be working past 6:30 p.m. Pretty much the only things that I watch at this point, I do watch League of Legends like frequently. I really, really, really like watching competitive League of Legends. And in fact, I'm going to the LCS finals this weekend down in Texas, and I'm going to be there for 3 days watching the finals in person. It's going to be lit. It's going to be exciting. I'm really, really stoked on it.
So you're just watching it on a very big screen.
Right. But I will be at the arena and like where like all of it's taking place. Like,
so you get to see, how close are you going to be to the
we're like pretty close.
I know I'm kind of trying to make fun of it, but
I know you are. It's not going to work. Right. It's awesome because it's so fun.
But you're not watching them do anything other than sit there in front of a screen.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, there's like extra effects and there's extra like pieces of the production and everything like that. It is a really, really cool thing.
Okay.
And like if you are involved in esports at all, the environment and like the general vibes of it are just immaculate. Just the vibes through the roof. Just fantastic stuff. But I'll watch League of Legends. Sometimes I'll watch in the mornings. I really like watching LAC stuff. Sometimes I watch Counter-Strike, but not very often. Counter-Strike happens kind of like, it just takes too much attention away, I think. And then I'll watch like island games. I watch like Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football just because I play Showdown on them, and I don't really watch outside of that. So I think that people kind of have it a little bit misconstrued of what life is like a DFS person is, and like whether you're on the content creation side or whether you're playing. I think people kind of have it a little bit twisted. Over the last couple of days, I did a seminar for some college kids that were in a fantasy sports class, and they asked, like, because they were really excited, and this is for people who want to get into either sports analytics or the DFS industry, like after they're out of college, and they wanted me to kind of break down what my life was like. I was like, listen, it's a serious grind, and I don't even really like watching sports anymore because of it. So understand that this is not like, oh man, this person gets to just be in sports for their entire life. Like, isn't that so cool? Like, yeah, but too much of any good thing is still going to take toll on you. So just always keep that in mind. Like, Blunder and I are very lucky to do the things we do, and we make sure that we can continue to do the things that we do for a living. But it's certainly not for everyone. It's hard for some people.
But most of the work is not watching sports.
Right.
And typically watching sports is the least productive part of playing DFS. You're not like, it's not what most top play, like, for instance, if you were the top players that play like everything, I'm talking about guys that enter every contest in the lobby, every sport pretty much, like dude, their life is like on a Sunday, even for football, would be, well, once 1 o'clock lock hits for NFL, they ain't watching football because they got to do their afternoon lineups. They got to do the NBA lineups. The MLB, like during September, there'd be games for that. There are showdowns for all these things. Like, they're working on all their lineups for all that type of stuff. And then 4 o'clock lock hits for the afternoon games. And then they're working on Sunday night baseball, showdown lineups. They're working on their soccer slates throughout the day. If they're playing soccer, they're playing everything. NBA maybe going on at 5:30 lock for NBA. Like that, watching the game, watching the stuff is that, look, they got stuff to do. Right. There's actual stuff to do that sitting down and watching the game is not doing it. You're not doing anything. Like, all you're doing, it's very similar, but slot machines.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize, like, when you go to Las Vegas, you go to a casino, you go to whatever, and these advanced slot machines that have the thing, the rings are flying around, the fucking thing goes up, you play a little game, the thing goes, blah, 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 blah. I'm from Egypt, and here's the pyramid, and coin, and all that type of stuff. It's a random number generator.
Yeah.
Like, all that, it seems like you're spending like 17 seconds watching the thing play out, and like, will the 10 match with the 10? Will the king match with it's already determined. It's just playing out in front of you. Like, the second you press that button, that outcome, based on a range of probabilities, based on their pay, it's at 88% payback machine and 92% payback machine. It's all computed like that automatically for you, but it has to give you some amount of entertainment value to raise your endorphins or whatever, get your dopamine going, the last, I got all the 4 rolls went like this, and the 5th one, I was that close from $240,000. It's like, no, the machine knew that all the way before there. It could literally, like, if you wanted to, if it's not, they're not going to do that, make it so that the second you press the button, it goes, you get $3. You get nothing. You get $1. Like, it could be that, but they put on a whole big show to entertain you for that result. That's, in DFS, that's what watching the games is comparable to. Like, there's no choice other than late swap. Like MMA, like I said, I watch MMA out of pure entertainment. Why? There's no late swap in MMA. Once the slate locks, there's nothing I can do to control the outcome. There's no amount of work I could put in. There's nothing that I could, if I were to walk away from the TV and not even watch it, and then at the end look and go, oh, I made money, or like it wouldn't have mattered if I watched it or not, right? Very similar to the slot machines. It's not gonna matter. So all you're doing when it sounds like, oh, I'm gonna sit here and what, like, if you're doing it for entertainment purposes, do whatever you want for entertainment purposes, right? You're watching League of Legends, even if there's no slate or something like that. I'm watching Star Trek, right? It's like anything else. Well, instead of watching Star Trek, you're watching Sunday Night Football. But like, what the showdown slate locks for Sunday Night Football, there's nothing more you can do. Now, better DFS players may be spending that time from after when showdown locks, like on Monday night or something. If I'm playing showdown, like I'm usually not watching Monday Night Football, right? I'm usually not watching it. Why? Because typically 8 to midnight is when I spend time with my wife, especially on the days that she works, right? So it's like, well, what am I going to, now, if she was gone for that day, I'd probably be watching Monday Night Football, because what else is on, right?
What else are you going to do?
What else am I going to do? So it's like, but watching the games shouldn't be the priority. That isn't the part of DFS that you need to add more time onto. You should be adding more time onto everything else. Learn, take a statistics class. Do something outside of watching the sports. Watching the sports isn't the part of DFS. You should be trying to make that as small of amount of time as possible. Let's say you don't have much time. Like, the first thing you should cut is watching the games, right? And people are like, well, that's like the most fun part of sweating the games. It's like, yes, that's why it is a recreational entertainment product from DraftKings and FanDuel. That's what it's pitched as. That's what casual people want. I want to build a lineup a half an hour before the game, right? Go in the showdown. I'm going to play this, and this. And now I have some rooting interest in the game, and I could, I could turn $5 into 5,000. That is the product that is the entertainment product that they've built. If you want to play it as an entertainment product like that, I'm not stopping you. Go for it. Have fun. Build a lineup on the toilet and have fun. And don't expect to be profitable long-term doing it that way. But if you want to have fun, go for it. It's like playing blackjack at a casino. But if you're playing seriously to make money then it's like you said, it's not this lifestyle of like, oh, I got my man cave and I'm just sitting around with a little laptop and watching sports on 18 different screens, because really the watching the games part doesn't do anything.
I've actually found that it has made me worse at modeling, like, because it would introduce these weird biases that I would have, and I would look at what the models were saying, and I would see that, I don't know, some players projected way worse than what I would conceive them to be able to do based on what I have watched during the games. Like back when I first got started, I noticed that I was actually developing biases in my models because I thought that players were better than what they actually are. And usually the models would win out, and usually I'd be wrong about that player. And I had to, I thought about that. I was like, I should probably stop watching these things, because it's kind of making it harder for me to build competitive models. Like it just introduces weird biases. And like you said, if you really, really love watching sports, watch it because you enjoy watching it. Don't watch it because you think that it'll make you better at DFS.
Right. MMA, it works very much because there's very small sample sizes with fights and everything that people, I watched the past 3 fights. This guy can't defend takedowns in the past 3 fights.
Yeah.
And like, how many times was he taken down? Well, 4 times. But it doesn't look like his technique doesn't look whatever. And then you look and it's like, yeah, because he faced 3 really good wrestlers.
Yeah.
And then in the next he doesn't get taken down at all and ends up destroying the guy. And people are like, who would have thought that? It's like, me. You know why? Because I didn't watch his last 3 fights. I just went by numbers on betting lines, and he's 12%. Like the first fight of the night, this past Saturday, another classic Saturday where I have a $12,000 swing on the last fight. Beautiful. And of course, it doesn't go my way. Although I shouldn't say of course, because 2 times it did go my way and I made a lot of money. But this time I could have came in third in the 555 if Luke won, and I won a whole bunch of other stuff, like not first place, but like top 5. And all he had to do was win. It didn't even matter really what his score. He had to score 54 points. And it's very hard not to score 54 points in MMA in a win in a 5-round fight. So I was like, just win, whatever. And then Muhammad won as the underdog. And there goes that. So I went from winning like 11,000 to losing 1,000. Right. So it's like that type of stuff. If Luque wins, I win 11,000. If Luque loses, I lost 1,000, which I was happy to just lose 1,000, really, based on the results. But the first fight of the night, the quick win bonus, Alateng Galicelli, whatever his name is, just KO'd the guy in the first round, got 128 points, and he was like 11% owned because he was overpriced for his odds. But at 11% ownership, he was, based on my sheet, he was one of the most under-owned fighters on the slate because he had like a 32% inside the distance and like 14% round one finish odds, which was lower than some of the other fighters in that range. And no one wanted to play because, and all I could hear, and I tell people this in Discords that I'm in, and I'm like, I'm going to be playing a ton of Alateng. It's like, yeah, but this guy, he's, what the thing is, he hasn't finished a fight in his UFC career. He's never gotten a finish. His UFC career is like 6 fights, right? 6 fights just total. He's lost 3 of them. Like lost 3 of them, and the other 3 that he won were matchups where he wasn't even the favorite. Like I think 2 out of the 3 that he won, he was the underdog in the fight. And then the one that he won was just a decision win, and he's against another like striker, like if you looked at just even the context of what I know about MMA, you'd look and go, there may be a reason for all this. And if he was that, and my main thing is that when it's like, well, this guy has a very low chance of getting a finish. Like that's why people weren't going to play him. Because compared to these other guys, it's like, yeah, but he's still a 32% chance of getting a finish. Yeah, but he's never gotten a finish in 6 fights. So, well, then how come the betting market is still acting like he's a 32? Like, dude, it's not like these are fairly liquid enough markets across the board. Like his inside the distance line is still like 30 to 34%. Like, oh no, but no, the you know what I get told so often? Yeah, the betting line is off.
Oh yeah.
Or even better, James. Vegas is the MMA sports betting streaks are wild to listen to. Vegas is trying to trap you, right? They'll put a line up that it's like, no, there's they're trying to get a lot of trapping parlays, right? By making someone a very big favorite, like that people were saying about Close with his neck issues. But like I said before, they're just leaving him up as a -525 favorite and a -105 inside the distance because they want to trap people into betting like a 3 fight parlay into a 4-1 with a fight that shouldn't be -525. So people are more confident. It's like, dude, that's not how this works.
That's not how any of this works.
That's not how any of this works, right? If that line was that significantly off, they would have to change it because they'd be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars coming in on a obviously off line, right? On the other side of the fight. And there's no movement.
And we're not even talking about like somebody like all the money would be coming in on an underdog, and then they would be like on the other side of that. We're talking like their payout would be significant based on the underdog if that line was wrong.
Right.
I'm not leaving that up.
Yeah, but that's the type of stuff those are the types of things where you take advantage. Like I'm telling you, when people ask me like what's the advantage that I have by like we come out with this course, right? Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. How to think like a professional DFS player. It's a 15-hour course. Get it, theoryofdfs.com. It's like I'm on the show every day, every weekday. You're on. We say I give out 100% of what I know. There's 100%. And I should still make money giving out everything that I know. The secret sauce is figuring out what everyone else is going to do. I mean, like, and taking advantage of that. So it's like you could do the same thing. It's not like I'm doing it like James, you do it more mathematically, or some people try to do it more mathematically. And all I do for MMA, I'll listen to a ton of podcasts. look at a ton of content and whatever. And I'm not beholden to any fighter or any, I don't watch past tape or anything. And I just go, well, if this was true, why is the line like this? It's like, I just like, this guy has this woman has no shot at blah, 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 never did, like old trends. It's a small cage, so that favors the wrestler. This strike, like, I'm like, dude, if your assessment is like this, you're making it sound like this is an 80-20 fight when the betting line is like nearly pick 'em. So it's like, well, if other people are going to be looking at the tape and seeing the same thing, why don't I just take advantage of it and go, what do we know? Let's get back to the very beginning of this episode.
Mhm.
What do we really know? And the smaller the sample size, the more noise that it's possible. What do you know? Someone with a 3-fight sample in the UFC. And then a lot of people go, well, they have 8 regional fights. So I look back at their regional tape. And then I'll look at the records of the people that they faced on the regional scene. And it's guys that are 1-6, 2-8. I mean, like the worst fight. So like, how do you even judge that compared to a UFC level fighter? What is that? Oh, he is the striking efficiency or takedown of accuracy. It's like, yeah, against bums on the regional scene. Like, why are we even using that data? Like, he's facing someone with 6 UFC fights under their belt, not a regional fighter as a newcomer, right? So like, those are the types of things where like people watch and go, oh, this guy, like so many people, and then you have the biases like this, Godzi, Omar Gurdzayev, whatever his name was, I have no idea. He was 8,300 versus Barayo 7,900, and people just saw a 13-0 Dagestani Russian name that is a wrestler and said DraftKings galore, right? Because Khabib, you know, like anytime you see a Dagestani, you go chain wrestler, right? Gonna take them down, everything like that. And the line opened with that guy like -145, right? It was a pick'em by fight day. And as the line started favoring the Brazilian, more and more people talked about Takedown City. This guy's under own, like that. How do you not take at 8,300? He may get 8 takedowns, whatever, like that. Talking about his, you know, his amateur, his non-UFC, his 13 fights. And I look, and I some people mentioned that the strength of schedule is suspect, right? And I looked and I said the strength of schedule is very suspect. So it's like, yeah, but the guy that he's fighting is also a newcomer, but like also a very good grappler and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and better on the feet. So it's like chain wrestler who is used to getting like bums fighting against an actual, the guy that he's facing is going to be the best fighter he's faced his entire career. So I'm sitting there while people are just blindly playing Russian name at that price. And I'm like, I'm just going to play the complete other side. And he was low owned. And if you watch the fight, you would think that you would think that, oh my God, this guy can't even wrestle. Like the guy tried to wrestle and got countered twice and got dominated on the ground. He's a Dagestani wrestler, got completely dismantled on the ground because he's never faced it. His strength of schedule is that bad that like against a competent grappler, like he has no chance. And he was like 28% owned. And I had the guy that was like 18% owned on the other side, but only due to that bias. So to me, that's the secret sauce. The secret sauce has nothing to do with like my secret sauce, at least. Like I can't put that into numbers though. I can't put like, I see what's going on. People are going to overplay this guy. I'm going to find leverage on the other side and build my lineups accordingly. Doesn't mean I have 0 of that guy, right? I still had like 8% of him, but he was 28% owned. But that's only due to just listening to what people are saying and just adjusting from well, this guy's going to be more on than I think people think, right? Projected at 24 and like probably going to be more like 28, right? Close was projected for like 40. I think he's going to be closer to 32, right? And you start moving stuff around. And then by the time lock hits, I look at my ownership versus actual ownership. And more times than not, especially now in MMA that I've learned how to adjust to the field more, that I think my ownership is the most accurate out of any of the sources. Mm-hmm. My eventual closing ownership of this is what I think is going to be ends up being closer. And then I'm building my lineups based on that ownership and not by RG projected ownership or insert site projected ownership. I'm just going through what are people saying? Like more people are going to play this underdog. More, to me, spending your time doing things like that. It's kind of weird to say, James, that it's better. Doesn't it sound weird if I said that if you had 4 hours of free time in a day, right? Between which would be more useful between 2 and 6 p.m. Eastern or 8 and midnight Eastern. Most people would go, I want 8 to midnight, so because I'm watching the games. And from 2 to 6, you know what I'd be doing instead of watching the games, I'd choose from 2 to 6 to just listen to all the podcasts or shows that's going to deal with this MLB slate coming up. Mm-hmm. That you would get more out of finding out what everyone else is saying than by actually watching the games.
Yeah, I think that if you were trying to be better at DFS in general, taking like that time in the middle of the day to figure out where ownership is going to lie. I've been saying it for probably like 2 years now that I think that ownership is by far the most important thing right now in DFS in terms of like finding success. Like projections are obviously getting much better, but I think that if you can figure out ownership, and I think that you can figure out to a more precise level of where people are going to be, that's more edge than you could. That's plenty of edge. Even if you didn't.
Projections are an edge. It's just that it's just sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. You have good projections.
That's all you need.
Right. That's all you need. Like all you need is reasonably good projections. Mm-hmm. Which one is the best? If people ask, like, are the RotoGrinders have the bad projections? Are the dude? All of that is better than having no projections. You got to start with something. The difference between projections around the industry are minimal at best, right? So if you start the worst projections amongst all the bunches of content sites that are out there is good enough, right? So if you choose not to use RotoGrinders, which I would suggest because that's what I use, right? Like that's better than, so there is an edge in that because there are plenty of people playing without projections and to me, they're dead in the water. But from the point that you have reasonably good projections, like that's why you said like the ownership, that's where more of the edge is. And we have projected ownership, and it's much harder to project ownership than it is to project players. Right? People think the opposite. People go, oh, it's very hard to project players. It's like, it's not that hard to project players. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to, because you have all this data to go by, right? To analyze and drill down into. Projected ownership is at the whims of human bias. I mean, and you can go back, you can analyze back in time and go to previous slates and go, well, based on this and based on that and based on this, and start developing this like this behavioral type of thing. But even that is flawed because every slate is different. And I mean, dude, there are things that you couldn't analyze from the past and go, oh yeah, everyone's playing this guy because of X, Y, and Z, and this podcast. I remember 2 years ago, Adam Troutman in a tight end league, and it's like okay, I'm gonna put this guy at like this percent, and he was like twice as much, and then it was like, yeah, this other site that was talking about him, yeah, that pushed up a lot of the ownership, and I started to adjust based on that. It's like, okay. The influence of certain places are much more than others. Like to me, that's what I spend more of my time. Do you have to spend all of your time doing that? No, But to me, I find it more productive to, after this show, like I have nothing to do today between the end of this show and putting together a couple of lineups, playing 5 lineups tonight in MLB. I won't do anything until like crunch time, right? I'll listen to, it's 6 o'clock at night, right? See the postponements or whatever. So like, what am I doing between like 12 or like, I'm most likely I'll take a shower, but I'll put on the morning grind, right? I'll put on, our MLB shows, or and around the industry. Just what are people, I'm looking at the bat projections right now, and I'm going, okay, let's see how popular Coors is tonight. What is the effect of the postponement games going to be? And I'm not listening intently. I'm putting it on like it's talk radio. A lot of times I put it on a playlist, and it just keeps on going. It just right. And I listen to 4 MLB DFS shows or NBA DFS in a row, and I'm not even sure who's talking or what show it it registers in my brain. It's like, yeah, everyone loves this. And I look at the projections and go, yeah, they have every right to love that guy, that pitcher, because he's the best projected point per dollar pitcher on the slate everything like that. But when I see the ownership is like 28%, I go, now based on what I'm hearing, this is going to be more like closer to 40%. So if he's closer to 40%, I got to start adjusting everything else. And then by the time you get to, but that's from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., all the players that I'm playing, I have a better gauge on ownership, and then build my lineups accordingly.
And that's the sauce.
That's the sauce. Okie doke. Jacob Calloway's in the chat. Directional bias is in the chat. Give me those thumbs up on your way out the door. We didn't get that many questions there. People are just listening on. People talking in the chat. Thank you very much. Right. Devin says in the chat, at the end of the day, it's simply a game, a puzzle that we're all collectively trying to solve. Well, maybe not collectively, right? Don't dupe me, bro. I don't want it to be collective. I want to win. Solo. So you can get the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, as always. 15-hour audio DFS masterclass, all these concepts that we talk about on the pregame show. Theoryofdfs.com. It applies to any sport. So go check that out. James, paydirtdfs.com. Paydirt_DFS on Twitter. That's right.
Yep. Both those things are right.
And you can follow me at Blender HD. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got live locks on the Scores and Odds channel with Grant. We got Grinders Live coming up later. 4:45, they'll go over the MLB slate. The Diamondbacks Nationals game has been officially postponed. We'll probably get 2 more PPDs coming by then. But then we got crunch time after Grinders Live, which is free all season. So you get the updated weather with Roth there and Cheese and all the guys. If you want to talk about tonight's MLB slate, and I'll be on tomorrow to review it all and answer your DFS strategy questions, as I always do on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.